better, and live better. So we are going to talk about I'm going to start off by introducing metabolic health and insulin resistance. What is the health status in Sri Lanka today? Unpacking the South Asian risk, lifestyle prescription for a healthy life. We're going to talk about meaningful takeaways afterwards, and then we'll finish off with questions and answers. So this word metabolic health, so that's what I consider myself now is I've got a special interest in metabolic health. And I think it's really important to understand what this means, because when a lot of us, we talked about weight, that we've all gained weight, okay? And there are now so many ways in which you can lose weight. I mean, I don't know whether the injections, weight loss injections have reached Sri Lankan shores, but in Australia, in all the other developed countries, it's a nightmare. You know, that's all you need to take, apparently, to lose weight. So you can lose the weight, but is it healthy? Is it sustainable? So when we talk about metabolic health, though, we're focusing on health, and I'll go through the details in a little bit. And it's really important to focus on health, because if you focus on health, you are going to lose weight, and it is going to be sustainable. And now, in our 50s, we don't have time to be messing around. We need to take action, and it has to be right for us, okay? So what is metabolic health? So metabolism refers to how the cells in the body convert the food that we eat into energy and building blocks, and gets rid of any waste products. And metabolic health is the indicator of how well this is working in the body, okay? And why is this important? This is important because now we know that every single non-infectious chronic disease, every single one, from type 2 diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, stroke, overweight, obesity, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, infertility, pain syndromes, chronic inflammation, mental health, all of this, the root cause is a metabolic dysfunction. It is something to do with an abnormality in how we produce energy in the cells, okay? So it's amazing, isn't it? Every single one of those. How many of you know that Alzheimer's disease is now called type 3 diabetes? Do you know that? You know, so it's the same mechanism that affects the body, that affects the brain. There is now a completely new and developing area of mental health called metabolic psychiatry, okay, where now they're focusing on metabolic health to improve mental health. So it's such an area of innovation and so much hope as well. So the underlying metabolic dysfunction that is key to developing all of these is called insulin resistance, and we will talk about that in a minute. And the wonderful news is that if there is a metabolic dysfunction, there is always a metabolic solution, which is foodable, not always druggable. Because the thing is that despite trillions of dollars being spent on medicines over the last 100 years, only a very few of these medications actually work at the level of the cell. So as a doctor, the tool that I was given to help my patients is medicine. I wasn't taught in any doctor. It's not just, I mean, I graduated in 1995, it was a long time ago, but this hasn't changed. We're still, all doctors are taught the same stuff. And so this is why, if you asked me a few years ago, can you reverse type 2 diabetes? The answer is no, because you can't, not with medicines, okay? But you can with food and lifestyle. So it's not that there's a problem with medicines, but I think we use them too early, and we don't give lifestyle and nutrition enough emphasis. So the metabolic solution to reversing insulin resistance is with a low carb, yes, unfortunately, low carb, healthy fat, whole foods lifestyle, which prioritizes protein, okay? So any questions, anybody? And from, if you have any questions, just put it in the chat for our people who joined in through Zoom. Anybody? No, we'll carry on. Okay. So let's talk about insulin, because it's so important to understand about insulin. So insulin is the queen of metabolism. Insulin is the hormone that tells the cells what to do with the food we eat, how to store it. Insulin is the key. So insulin is the key player, and insulin, so it's a hormone that's secreted by the pancreas. And one of its main jobs is to keep blood glucose levels under control. Now, for this presentation, I'll be using glucose and sugar, blood sugar and blood glucose synonymously. They're not quite the same, but just consider them the same, okay? So there's something really important to say about blood glucose or blood sugar, okay? Anything more than 1 teaspoon of glucose in your blood at any one time is highly toxic to the body. 1 teaspoon of glucose, that's 4 grams, okay? Now, so that's one thing. Secondly, once that glucose is in our body, we don't have a safe mechanism to get it out, okay? We can't pull it out or wee it out or sweat it out. So the only thing that we can do, and that's what insulin does, is puts it somewhere safer than the blood, okay? So that's insulin's job, and that's the only way we can do it. There's no other way. The body doesn't have any other mechanism to get this glucose out of the blood, okay? So let's imagine last night, and actually I had roti, string hoppers, what else? Appa and roast pan. Right? So yes, so I'm sitting here admitting that to you, but I had all of this. So let's imagine that we all had this, right? Now, what would happen? Now, I said anything more than 1 teaspoon of glucose is toxic in the body. Well, I definitely had more than 1 teaspoon, okay? So you can imagine, so what happens once you've had this, now, the other thing to remember, which I think sometimes we're not aware, is that even if we're talking about starchy or carbohydrate food, okay? Food that's made with starch, okay? Even if it's not sweet, when it's broken down in the body, it acts exactly like sugar. It's the same, okay? So all of this food that I ate last night, okay, would be digested by the stomach, and then it's released as glucose into the blood. It's far more than 1 teaspoon. So what happens now, if we'd, after this meal, got up and gone for a little walk around the block, or if we were at home, maybe done some housework, mopped the floor, done something where we were using our muscles, we were active, then some of that glucose will be taken up by the muscle out of the bloodstream, okay? So it's really important. That's why exercise and movement is so important, okay? But I didn't do that, and I don't know how many of you would have done any of that after dinner. We usually either watch television or we go to sleep, right? So then what's happened? So now you've got all this glucose sitting in your blood. Now insulin, this is when insulin comes to play. Insulin has to put this somewhere safe. So the first place insulin looks to put this is in our muscle, because our muscles are what we call glucose sinks. We can actually store a lot of our glucose in our muscle. The problem is, we are postmenopausal women. We are South Asians. We don't have a lot of muscle, okay? We have very little muscle. So we could put that glucose into muscle, but dependent on what we did over the course of the day. So remember, some of us, we eat 5 times a day sometimes, right? We eat, like in Australia and countries, it's called, you eat breakfast, morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea, dinner, right? I don't know, in Sri Lanka, we don't eat that many, but we eat 3 main meals of carbs, right? Mainly. So if you've eaten all of this and you've not really moved your body, your muscles are full. The storage is already taken up, right? So there isn't a lot of you might not be able to put any more into your muscle. So then insulin takes this remaining glucose to your liver. We can store 100 grams of glucose in the liver, and that's to use overnight when we're not eating. So all the rest of that meal that we ate is taken to the liver and converted into fat. Okay, because that is how human bodies store energy. So, and that fat we can store in different places depending on whether we are male or female, what our ethnicity is, how stressed we are. So, women are blessed to be able to store fat on the outside. Okay, we hate it. We don't like it. So this is the subcutaneous fat, the lighter brown fat on that diagram. That is subcutaneous. That's on the outside. I say blessed because that's the best place to put fat. Okay, it's much less toxic being men can't store as much fat on the outside as women. They store on the inside. They store in that visceral area, okay? And that is very, very highly inflammatory to store fat inside the body. I'll talk about that more. And if you're South Asian, which we are, we tend to store fat on the inside as well, okay? If you're highly stressed with a lot of cortisol, which is our stress hormone, we store in the middle, okay? That's why as postmenopausal women store a lot of fat in the middle because this time of life is really stressful. All right. So, so now this, I talked about one meal. Okay. Think about what we've been eating. One day, 1 week, 1 month, years. Okay. We've been eating. I mean, Sri Lankans, we eat. This is how we eat, right? So you can imagine after a while, so we're storing fat and we're storing fat. And eventually, like, where can we put all this fat? Okay, there's a limit to how much fat we can store. So what happens is that eventually, and so it's insulin that tells the cells to store this, right? Eventually, the cells decide, we can't keep on doing this. Like, where are we going to put all this stuff? So then the cells decide we need to stop listening to insulin. We need to stop listening to insulin's message. And then they become resistant to insulin. So now we have, let's say we've eaten our meal. Let's say we've had a rice meal last night. Now what happens is the glucose, the starch is broken down, released, the insulin, blood glucose is released into the blood, and now insulin comes from the pancreas. But now the cells are not listening to insulin's message, okay? So now we can't get rid of this glucose. And I said anything above 1 teaspoon of glucose is toxic. So now this is when things start to go wrong, okay? But in the body, there's no other way of getting rid of this glucose, okay? It's only through insulin. So the pancreas secretes more and more insulin. So there's more and more insulin. The cells aren't responding to insulin. The blood glucose is going up. And this is what we call insulin resistance, okay? And so this is, this is what we call insulin resistance, is the triad of insulin resistance. So what we are eating carbs, which then produces glucose. Oh, here we go. We're eating carbs, produces glucose. The pancreas releases insulin, and the cells are resistant to insulin, so therefore we release more insulin. Cells are less sensitive to insulin, so this goes round and round and round. In my mind's eye, I see this as a slinky toy, just carrying on and on and on. And so the other thing that I got to say here is that this visceral fat, the fat that is in red, is very, very metabolically toxic. It's highly inflammatory, and it's associated with metabolic syndrome, with cardiovascular disease, with malignancy. So this is the worst place to store fat, okay? Now, okay. So why is it so problematic to be insulin resistant? Because this is what drives all non-infectious chronic disease. Okay. Every single one of these, the root cause is insulin resistance. Okay. So that is what we need to address. Not calories in, calories out. We need to make sure our insulin levels are low. All right. So now, I just want to talk a little bit about macronutrients. Macronutrients are what food is made out of. So there's only three macronutrients. We've got protein, fat, and carbohydrate. That's all food is made out of those, okay? So this graph shows you how on this axis, this is blood insulin levels, and on this axis is time. So over time, how the various macronutrients impact insulin levels, okay? So you can see the biggest impact is with carbohydrate, okay? So anything that's starchy or sugary. So what happens is that when you have a carbohydrate heavy meal, or like my mother, one day when I went to see her, I went at about 10:30 to see her, and she said, "Oh, Nelum, I'm starving," because she'd had two slices of white toast with marmalade. Okay, that's all she's had. So what is that? That's literally, there's no substance to that meal at all. So she would have had a high amount of glucose released into the blood. Pancreas would have quickly released insulin in large amounts because that glucose went up very quickly. The insulin brought that glucose down very quickly. And then the glucose goes up, insulin goes up, and then the glucose comes crashing down. And at that point, you are starving again. And at that point, like a carrot stick is not going to work. That's not going to be enough, because she's going to really want something sweet again, because she feels like as if her blood sugars have really dropped. So that's what happens with carbohydrates. When you're predominantly eating carbs, you get this what we call glucose roller coaster. Okay, you're having glucose, and then the blood sugars come crashing down. You have another something very quickly to boost you up. It's like this, and that's what causes that irritability, that hangry feeling, and mental health. People get anxious, and all of that can be caused by this glucose roller coaster. Look at protein. Protein also causes an increase in blood insulin, but it's much more tempered. It's a slower increase and a slower rise. So when Siddhika was talking about having eggs for breakfast, that's what happens. The eggs can keep her full for longer, okay? So she won't need to have something like, hopefully she won't need to have the chocolate or the biscuit or whatever in the middle of with your tea. Look at fat. That's interesting, isn't it? Look at fat. Fat causes insulin to go up, but very, very little over a much longer period of time. So what have we been taught? We've been taught that fat is the culprit, right, to everything. But if I've been saying that it's insulin that causes weight gain and all this chronic disease, can fat make you fat? No. Is that a shock? Because that's what we've been told, right? You're eating fat, that's going to make you fat. But actually, what is it that makes us fat? Yeah, carbs. Okay. So this, I think, is really important. This, I think, is where we've gone wrong. All right. So, all right. In online attendees, girls, if you have any questions, just put it into the chat, please. So how do you know if you are insulin resistant? Okay, so if you are overweight or obese, if you have high blood pressure, if you have type 2 diabetes or cardiovascular disease or fatty liver or any of those, then you are insulin resistant. Okay. Um, and then if you have a waist measurement, and this is for the South Asians, so for us, for women, if it's over 89 centimeters, so let's say 90, and for men over 94 centimeters, that makes you insulin resistant. Easier than that is to look at the waist to height ratio. If your waist circumference is more than half, more than half your height, then that makes you insulin resistant. And the other interesting thing is skin tags. If you've got skin tags, particularly around your neck, and there's another sign that I haven't put in, but it's that kind of, it's called acanthosis nigricans, which is like a dark discoloration around your neck and armpits and things like that as well. So that is also an external sign of insulin resistance. Okay. The other thing that is very interesting is that for us South Asians, when we talk about these cutoffs of overweight and obese, they're much lower than the Europeans. Okay, so for us, anything a BMI of over 23 is overweight, and over 27 is obese. So it's much lower cutoff. Okay, before we get to that, any questions about that? Because that's really important to get the understanding about insulin and the role that it plays. Because at the end of the day, that is what drives every single chronic disease. So, any questions? Any questions from you girls online? And the gents, you can ask as well if you have any questions. Yeah. All right. So is that clear? Do you feel that that's clear? Okay. Let's go on to what's happening in Sri Lanka at the moment. Okay. So this is from 2024. So the current population is 22 million. Life expectancy is 79 years for a female and 74 for a male. In Australia, it's 87 for a female. So we all know that women do live longer than men, okay? So the major health challenge is the shift from infectious diseases to non-communicable diseases. So these kind of non-infectious chronic diseases, okay? And these non-infectious or non-communicable diseases account for 83% of all deaths, according to the WHO in 2023. And the main causes of death in Sri Lanka are cardiovascular disease, that's 38%, cancer 10%, chronic respiratory diseases 8%, and diabetes 6%. So this is how it looks on a chart like this. So there's quite the prevalence. So this is from National Survey details in 2023. Can you see that? Yeah. So you can see that high blood pressure, that about more than 30% of Sri Lankans have high blood pressure. Diabetes is about 22%. Pre-diabetes is 30%. Heart disease, stroke, sitting at about 12% there. Chronic kidney disease at about 15%. Overweight, obesity, close to 40%. Okay. Chronic respiratory diseases, and then fatty liver at 30%. So that's a significant disease load, isn't it? Disease burden in Sri Lanka. And the other thing to say is that these diseases in South Asians occur at a much lower age and a much lower body weight than our European, than other ethnic groups. So we are much more at a higher risk, okay? And the other So this is, when do diseases begin in Sri Lanka? Okay, so this is a real concern, isn't it? That the changes start in our 20s. Okay, now. So maybe not necessarily for our generation, but we have to think about the younger generation. Okay, so that's and so 30 to 40 is that risk factor accumulation, and then 40 plus is when diseases are detected. And you probably all know, some of you already have, I mean, you've already mentioned, you've already got these chronic diseases. And when we look around, it seems like everybody around us has this. It's like the norm in a way. So the thing here is that this is impacting Sri Lankans at a much earlier age. And this is during those really precious working years, okay? And it can have a real impact on our working lives. So it is a real issue, okay? So the take-home message is, don't wait for symptoms. We can't wait for symptoms, okay? By the age of 40, many metabolic changes are already in motion. So this is way too late. We're now in our 50s, but maybe for your kids, okay, maybe for your children, because particularly for our younger women, if you have daughters, how many of them have polycystic ovarian syndrome who are struggling with fertility? Okay, this is a huge issue in our South Asian community. So, it's really important to get them aware and to get them checked out. So let's talk about briefly why this is happening to us. Why are the South Asians more at risk? Because we are, and we have very specific risks that make us much more vulnerable to these problems, okay? So the first thing is that there are some genetic reasons as well. And the first thing, we talked about insulin, right? So insulin is the key, the master manipulator of what we do with the energy that we produce. But the problem in South Asians is that the insulin production within the pancreas is compromised. It's not as efficient as other ethnic groups. So we don't produce a lot of insulin, and what we do produce doesn't work as well. So that's one big, massive issue, okay? So there's lower insulin secretion capacity. And this is even before the onset of diabetes. So that is that we do have a genetic predisposition. We're more vulnerable to this. So this then, and then associated with that, we all talked about the fact that we all have this visceral fat, right? All of us have visceral fat, and visceral fat is always associated with inflammation. So that also worsens this beta cell function. Beta cells are where insulin is produced in the pancreas. So these two also make that situation worse. So then these overworked cells burn out. And so that causes insulin levels that we produce over our lifetime to reduce. And so there's a shortfall in insulin. And that's one trigger of why we are more vulnerable to these conditions, okay? Because our pancreas and the way we produce insulin is compromised. And that's just the way it is. We have inherited this, okay? Then, I'm sorry, this one. So this is a picture of my father. Okay. He'd be mortified to know that he's here. He doesn't know that he's on this slide. But basically, so what I'm trying to show here is how our build, how we carry a lot more fat in the middle. We're more apple-shaped, okay, and less muscle. We have scrawny, most of us, thin arms and legs, and we have a belly. So that's what I'm trying to show here. Okay. And he's holding his prized caravilla. He's grown this caravilla that he's very happy to. Yes, patol. No. It's a bitter gourd. Yeah. Yeah. Bitter gourd. This is. Yeah, caravilla. But this is his caravilla. This is bitter gourd. Yes.
Snake gourd.
Okay. Yes. All right. Anyway, that's him. So let's go through this is what we call the phenotype. So how we look and the way our bodies are formed. Okay. So we have less muscle. We all that's South Asians have less muscle. That's just the way we are. And so therefore we don't have as much capacity to store this glucose in our muscle. Okay. So, and many Sri Lankans have smaller muscles, so the body can't clear sugar as well. So that leads to a higher risk of not just diabetes, but all those chronic diseases. And South Asian muscles handle sugar less efficiently. The muscles that we do have are less powerful and they're not as big. So again, that's another reason. Okay. And then we have what's called we all of us, all humans have what's called a personal fat threshold, how much fat we can store on the outside. So most of you would have heard if you did travel overseas that they'd say, but oh, but you are so slim or you're little, you can't have problems. That's because in other parts of the world, other ethnicities can store a lot more fat on the outside. So they think that we probably look better, okay, but we're not better in terms of health because we don't have the capacity to store on the outside as much as other ethnicities. So, and that's something to do with that's that's an evolutionary adaptation to living near the equator. We've never had to store a lot of fat. We don't need to insulate. So we didn't develop the capacity to store fat on the outside. So we reach the too much fat faster. Um, and then so what happens is that we store a lot more fat inside, okay? Even women, we store fat in the inside and we store fat in our organs. So in the liver, in the pancreas, in our muscles. This is highly inflammatory, okay? So this is what leads to things like diabetes, heart attacks, strokes, cancers, things like that. And so, yeah, fat builds up inside organs. And fatty liver is very common. And I think some of you have already mentioned that. So when in 1995, when I graduated, and all the doctors who listen to this in our group will say the same, the most common cause of fatty liver was alcohol. Okay, that was what. So anybody, and to this day, if somebody has fatty liver, we just automatically end up asking, how much alcohol do you drink? But nowadays, it's not alcohol, it's sugar. Okay, it's sugar. So and now we're saying, when I graduated 35 years ago, we never saw fatty liver in children. It was unheard of. It was an adult disease. Now we're seeing fatty liver in children. That comes from what they're eating. That's sugar. Okay. And then we have this thin, fat Sri Lankan body. We're called toffees. Thin on the outside, fat on the inside, right? That's us. And so for the same BMI, we have more fat. So there's many examples of taking Europeans and South Asians and the same body mass index, the South Asians have significantly more fat. It's just this is the other reason. So first, the fact that the pancreas doesn't make enough insulin, it's not efficient, and this also the fact that from our body type is also against us. Okay. And then think of our lifestyle. What do we eat? I mean, we don't need to talk too much about what we eat because we know exactly, it's all carbs, right? Mostly, most of the base of our meals is carbs, and not just any carb, it's highly refined carbs, okay? And sweets, and this is that's what we do. Every meal is like this. And then because we are very social, all South Asians are very social, we get together a lot, and every single occasion is filled with lovely food, isn't it? Which is lovely. But if you think about the insulin, the fact that our pancreas really struggles, and this is what we're giving it to process, it's a real problem. And then so when we were growing up, okay, I somebody asked me when I was in Australia, okay, so but this is what you grew up eating, Nelum. And yes, it was. But when I reflected on that, think about how we grew up. We ate mostly, sometimes I ate 3 meals of rice a day. And I'm sure you did as well as a younger person. But it was all home cooked. Okay. We cooked all our vegetables. We had meat, and we ate meat as well, or fish or eggs or something. And a variety of vegetables, all mostly cooked in coconut oil, coconut milk. It was freshly cooked. We rarely got stuff we didn't take away, right? If we did go out, we would mainly, I think, go to other people's homes. They did exactly the same. I can't ever remember going out as a child to a restaurant. It was not in my family life. And then what did we have? Of course, we had sweets, but we mainly had fruit, didn't we? So, it was a different way of eating. Yes, there were, sweets, but it wasn't as easily available as it is now. So I think it's just the type of food. And so now what the problem is, this westernized foods that have made its way into Sri Lanka and into South Asia, all this, particularly these sweet, the drinks, the Cokes and the Coca-Colas and things like that, highly refined. So, and these highly processed foods, right? So that worsens the problem. We already had a situation where we were eating too much carbs, but that's how generations of South Asians ate. So what's changed now? Because it is now that the last 50 years is when the problem has become worse. So it's the introduction of this westernized diet. And then low physical activity. We're not, South Asians on the whole are the laziest ethnic group in the world. And Sri Lankans, now, I found information on Sri Lanka, and what they said. Let me just see where is it? Here we go. Where is my thing about Sri Lanka? Physical activity, yes. Oh, I found it. I can't remember where I put it. Anyway, oh yeah, I put it. Yes, in 2023, there was a study done, and it showed that most Sri Lankans, 40% of Sri Lankans do not do physical exercise, and nearly 50% of women don't do adequate exercise. So that's another issue, okay? So if we're not active, then we gain weight, we have low muscle mass, that also leads to poor metabolic health. Stress is not something I think that we are good at talking about. We just get on with it, we just do it. And mental health issues in the last I don't know, 10 years, particularly after COVID, that's been a huge, so that mental stress and mental health issues increase our cortisol, which is our stress hormone, which builds visceral fat and encourages unhealthy eating as well, because when you're stressed, you want sugar. That's what happens. So this is another. So all of these things also contribute to the underlying issues there. So then, so do you see? So when you think, if you put all of this together, our genetic predisposition, our phenotype, the way our bodies are built, and all these lifestyle factors, that's why we are at such high risk of developing these. Okay. So any questions? Anybody from the audience, the online community, or who want to is there anything that you want to say? Or if you want to unmute and ask me a question directly. Okay, anybody from here? So is it a bit shocking? Okay, you understand. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so now.
Some South Asians, bit surprising, some of them engage in physical activity. I mean, I'm not talking about the middle class.
Yeah.
But a lot of them either on the farm.
Yes.
Or, walk to the bus stop.
So what they found, Lekha, is that so in the farming community, they only do what is absolutely necessary, and then the incidental exercise is significantly less. So they will work hard in the fields or do their daily exercise or their activity or their basic, it's work, isn't it? Their work. But when they come home, and then as soon as they retire or give up that, they don't do anything. So that's right. So, okay. So what then is the lifestyle? What's happening? The lifestyle prescription that is important for South Asians. Yes.
In your research, is it does vitamin D play a role in this?
Yes, it's interesting. It does actually. Vitamin D is very, very important, and I will come back to that when we're talking about that. But so there's an evolutionary adaptation as well for vitamin D, because vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, okay? And in other, people in like the Europeans, for instance, because they live in parts of the world that don't have a lot of sun, they actually grew a lot of, that's one of the reasons why they carry a little bit more weight on the outside, because they needed to be able to store vitamin D higher amounts so that to be able to, for their functionality. But we don't need to do that, right? So therefore we really rely on vitamin D being made from the sun through our skin. So vitamin D is made from cholesterol within the skin. But how many of us Sri Lankan women are out in the sun, getting our vitamin D, right? So that's a huge problem, right? So we will talk about that. Thank you, Shweta. So for us, this lifestyle prescription, it's all about balance, okay? So we'll talk about that. So the first and foremost thing that we need to do is sleep. We can't do any of what I'm going to talk about if we're not sleeping. Because if we're not sleeping, we are metabolically really stressing the body. Okay, sleep is not optional. I used to pride myself that I could get by with 5 hours of sleep, right? I used to be really proud of that, but no, I didn't buy it. That's what happened with my brain. Some of you probably, I don't know if you're still, how many of you really prioritize sleep? No.
Can't survive without sleep.
Well, great. That's really good, because sleep is so important, and we have evolved to get 1/3 of our life should be spent sleeping, right? This is not an optional thing. We can't just somehow manage without it. There is a purpose for sleep. And
where is according to age? The need for sleep?
Not really.
Because my daughter is a uni and I don't think she gets sleep.
No, yeah. She can manage because she's young, right? No, yeah. But that isn't good for her. Yeah, that's right. But
it's a phenomenon.
Yeah.
Why am I not?
So that is due to cortisol. That's a stress response. Getting up at 3. That's very.
Can you go back to sleep? With nothing.
Yes, but hopefully with the right food, we can maybe help with that. Okay, so prioritizing 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep. That is so important. And getting to sleep before 10. Now, this is not something that I've made up. The reason is our sleep hormone. melatonin starts to, increases after around 6 p.m., as it gets darker. So it tends to peak between 10 to 12. So we need to be in bed to actually get that melatonin benefit. Some of us are night owls, some of us are early sleepers, and that's fine. That's how, but we just need to make sure. And, the reason I specifically put this, I don't have to put this when I'm talking to Australians because they're all in bed by 10, but not South Asians, no. So, and, avoid late night caffeine and alcohol. Sajid doesn't ever seem to have a problem with either any of this. But yes, this is, yeah. And then stress reduction, this is something that's built into our culture, into our religion. We have it, it's there, right? We have, mindfulness, meditation, yoga, it's all part of how South Asian Sri Lankans have, we've so many thousands of years of history. So we need to find a way. You don't have to do those, but something that helps with the stress reduction. Truly, the more I do this metabolic health stuff, the importance of stress. It is so important that we have some way of managing stress. So I think these are really, really important. Community connection is never, I think, a problem with us Sri Lankans. There's always, we have people around us, so I think that's fine. But
that's the reason for lack of sleep too sometimes.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yes. Now, so then fueling the body wisely. I think this is what all of you really want to find out about.
Should look slightly into like you want too much
Are we? Okay, we'll just pause for a minute. Okay. So when we're talking about fueling the body wisely, the first, my first point is prioritize protein with every meal, okay? It is so important. So proteins are our building blocks. We don't use protein as fuel. And proteins build muscle, tendon, organs, skin, all the enzymes that do the millions of reactions that happen in our body, the neurotransmitters in the brain. And it builds bone strength. 50% of our bone is protein, okay? So I really want to talk about bone strength just briefly because it is so important. And women lose 20 to 30% of bone strength when we go through menopause. That's a huge amount, particularly if we don't have a lot to begin with, okay? In our lifetime, 1 in 2 women will sustain an osteoporotic fracture. So that's me or you, Priyanka, me or you, Shweta. So, and then if 50%, once we've had a fracture, we will not get back to pre-injury functionality. And 30% of us will die with that fracture. So this is not something this is so important, particularly for us postmenopausal women. It is so important. And included in that is not just protein, but sunlight, vitamin D, calcium, and the right amount of food. Okay. But today I'm going to talk about the fact that protein enhances satiety. It makes us feel full. That is what is that's the secret ingredient here. Okay. That's what then allows us to maybe eat a little bit less of the carbs. Now I will send you these. I'll send you a copy of I'll send you a PDF of all these slides, and I'll send you also this protein chart and things like that. If you given me your email, then we can do that. And for the girls online, if you send me your email, I can send you all of this. So, how much protein should we have? So, firstly, is there anybody who's a vegetarian here? No.
Until this year.
Okay.
It's very reason I started.
Right. Good, good, good. That's excellent. Yes. And anybody online who's a vegetarian who doesn't eat animal protein? Okay. All right. So anybody? No. All right. So we need to be having 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram ideal body weight. So this is not your current body weight. Ideal body, it's a bit complicated. Ideal body weight is if you take the fat out, like what is your body weight then? So I've kind of, so it's kind of something similar to 70 to 80 grams of protein per day for women and 80 to 100 grams for men. Okay. So now the question is, okay, so what do you think? 70 to 80 grams of protein per day for women. Doesn't sound like a lot. Are you getting it? Do you think?
Sorry, it's just less than 100 grams, right?
It's less than 100 grams. Okay, so the question there, Harshini, is what you didn't ask me is what does that look like?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Two boiled eggs.
We will go through it. So firstly, the first thing to remember is protein food and protein are two different things. In most protein food, we're talking animal foods here. About 100 grams of protein food will have only about 25% protein. So now, in all of this, I'm not going to talk about weighing, measuring, calorie count. We're not doing any of that. But for protein, we need to have an idea. When I'm talking about 100 grams of protein food, you need to know what I'm talking about. So we're going to talk about a palm size. Okay, and each of our palm sizes are going to be different. Your palm size is going to be different from your husband's palm size. But for that individual, so 100 grams of, let's say, chicken is a cooked chicken meat is about this. That's 100 grams of protein food. That will have approximately about 25 grams of protein. Okay, so now, this chart is not specifically for Sri Lankans. It is a general chart, but I just wanted to give you a few more. So that's if you kind of, so it's kind of like an eyeballing. You don't need to measure. Okay, we're not doing any measuring, but just when you eyeball. So if you're eating, what else? Let's say, so chicken, eggs. Each egg has 6 grams of protein. That's why when I talk about eggs, and this is why, I say if you're having eggs, you need to have at least 3 eggs at a time. You can have eggs morning, noon, and night. And in a recent low-carb conference in October in Australia, it was said that as long as you're having less than 2 dozen eggs a day, you're fine. 24 eggs. Wait, no, but basically, this is a myth about the cholesterol, okay? This is a myth. Eggs are perfect. They're wonder foods. They're nature's wonder food, okay? But if you're having eggs, you need one egg is neither here nor there, okay? So what else? What else do we have? And then you can get plant proteins. There are plenty, and a lot of us will eat the atta varga, right? But the problem is that they have very small amounts of protein. So things like paripu, kadala, mung atta, cowpea, they're all good sources of protein. But half a cup of cooked atta will give you about 7 to 9 grams of protein. And it has lots of carbs. Yes. So this is the problem. So, soy, Sri Lanka, do you eat a lot of soy? Like soy, it's not something, yeah. I mean, if you're a vegetarian, then you would, but it's not common, not like in the Chinese and other parts of the world. But soy is very good. It has, in terms of, for a vegetarian option, non-meat option, half a cup will give you cooked half a cup of soy will give you about 14 grams of protein. Oh, I've got a, let's have,
Texture.
yes. Yeah, the problem is it is processed.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
processed.
Yes,
Yeah, I think that-
but I'm so glad that most of that all of you girls are eating meat, because the problem is that if you're not, well, you don't have an option. That okay.
Is milk enough substitute for vegetarian?
No, milk,
Cheese.
yeah, milk, cheese, they're all fine, but cheese is particularly good. Yeah, but yeah, and okay, that's fine. Yeah, I've got that from Dr. Yeah. So yeah, so this is sorry, I'll get rid of that. And so the other thing is, how should this protein be distributed throughout the day? Okay, you can't just have it, all. Well, it is impossible. Now, when I talk to my patients, and what I find is that most women are only getting about 30% of what they should be for protein. So would you, if you kind of think about what you have, would that be about right? It's very hard to actually get that amount. And you can't actually go from where you are to where you need to be in a week. It is impossible. But I just want you to start thinking about it. But also, 30 grams of, so sorry, what the minimum, so how should this be distributed? And the distribution, science says you need to be having 30 grams of protein with your first and your last meal of the day. First and last meal of the day. I don't say breakfast and dinner, because some people don't necessarily have, multiple meals. They might have, so it just depends, okay? But the reason is that even though we're not aware of it, protein and bone, muscle and bone are constantly kind of being broken down and made up in the body. So you're constantly needing to give the building blocks. So when you are coming out of a fast with your first meal of the day, the body is expecting the building blocks, because that's our building block, right? And the same when you're going going into a fast after our last meal of the day. So 30 grams with your first and last meal. So for most of us, it will be like something like 30, 20, 30 or 30, that'll be what we need to be having. And some people ask me, can you have too much protein? It's really hard to even have this. This is what you need to have. Okay, so it's very, very difficult unless you have severe chronic renal disease, kidney disease. Then you have to back down a little bit, but I don't think any of you have that issue. So and then when you're thinking about your plate, whatever you're eating, what you need to do, the first thing you put on the plate, or the first thing you think about, is which protein and how much. Okay, and then you put, depending on the meal, your a little bit of carbs or vegetables or salad and some good fats, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So if I will send you, so because I have done a post in my Whole Food Revolution website about plant versus animal protein, the pros and not the pros and cons, but why there is a difference to the quality of the protein. Because we are human beings, we need really the best protein source for us is animal foods. So I've explained that. That's another whole lecture. So I've explained it all, and I'll send that to you. All right. And so any more questions about proteins? So basically the take home here would be that we need to increase our protein. It has to be added to every meal. And typically what we say is maximum of 3 meals and no snacks, because if you have the right amount of protein, you're full.
Yes.
Yeah.
After 2 hours of sleep, I feel, although I don't have a sugar crash, I get into hangry.
Right.
I get my
Irritable and annoyed. Yeah.
I can't function.
Yeah. Yes.
And I feel like some kind of hunger.
Yeah.
Everything, and it's just 2 hours after me.
Yes.
So I check sometimes, I check my sugar.
Yeah.
And it is, it's like sometimes it's 120, sometimes 100.
Right.
Well, but the worst case, I'm having 100,
Yes.
which is what I'm supposed to.
Yeah. That's right.
But at that point, my body is telling me I'm having a sugar crash.
Yes.
And after that, whatever I eat is not enough. Like
You just got to keep on eating. Yeah.
House down.
Yes.
To feel like satiate.
Yes.
Right. So then obviously then I'm going to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then sometimes I have to go nap and recover from it.
Yes.
It takes about 2 hours.
Yeah.
So which is a really impediment
Yes.
for me.
Yeah.
And so now in the morning I used to have 2 eggs, some cowpea or something. So now in order to stop that, I put some vegetables.
Yeah.
And then also I introduced like some rye bread to have a little bit of some.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, I'm better off than
Yes.
just the eggs and the.
Right. Interesting. Okay. That's fine.
Now I have
A little bit of,
like a salad and half a slice of rye bread.
Yeah.
So it's not
And
the
that's
rye
fine,
bread.
Harshini. That is, so you're not, that's fine. That's fine. Gayatri, yes. Sorry. So just, I would say if you found something that, and some
But it
fat.
doesn't- Maybe I need to have a bit of butter.
Yes. Cook your eggs in butter. Great. Don't worry about it.
But my thing is every meal in 2 hours. It's gone. And
Right.
like that you could do.
Right.
No, I could, because I have this fear of, when I go.
When you,
out,
yes.
like-
So do you get this at night as well?
Yeah, but less so at night.
Right.
But I have got it in the
Yes.
evening.
Yeah.
I go tend to be about, sometimes I eat my dinner early as 4 and tired.
Right. That's good. That's very good. Yes.
So when I eat at 4, then by the time I'm 9 or 10, I'm hungry.
You're
again.
hungry again. Okay.
So
So I think you need to have protein and fat,
butter.
or something. So if you're eating, that's the other thing, we grew up, if you have chicken, you don't have the chicken skin, right?
Yes.
Chicken comes naturally with fat, with its skin, right?
Is it okay?
Yeah, exactly. It's a whole food. I don't know. Do they put hormones into in the skin? Okay, maybe. That's fine. Not to. Okay, if that's the reason, that's different. But don't. Yeah. Butter, coconut oil, all of those, ghee, avocado. Yeah.
But it adds to your weight.
No, how can that add to the weight, Lekha? We did.
We just did. But butter has the.
Butter is fat. Butter is literally fat to get that head.
Get around that thought.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
very difficult.
It's very
It is very difficult.
Like, it's like if
But try it out and see.
I would love
Because
to.
you can't, the thing is, you can't go low carb and low fat. You can't do it because you won't have anything to eat. So you have to, yes, yeah, great. It's a whole food, right? It's
Person, what's that?
Vannakuda.
Vannaku. It says you have to eat pulsar. Yeah,
Lots of it.
yeah.
And eggs and anything, coconut oil, coconut milk.
No.
No, just have it. The thing about coconut oil is you've got to find, then in Sri Lanka, you need to figure out where to get the best source. So I think, is it cold pressed?
Cold press.
Cold pressed, you need to, because it's what else is added in to the coconut oil. That's the problem. The we'll talk about that. Right, I'll come to that. So, okay.
Then I have a question.
Yes.
Do you reckon 3 weeks? Because I hear some people saying you should have like
Yes.
2 meals and then schedule.
So maximum,
Fasting.
so I do say that, but we'll come to that. Maximum of 3 meals a day. maximum of 3 meals a day. Yeah. So yeah, that's right. I don't recommend one meal. Some people do, it's called OMAD, 1 meal a day, but you can't get all the nutrients you need in one. Yeah. So next is cut down on starches and sugar. We're not saying to remove it all. We can't, okay? We are Sri Lankans. This is how we grew up. It is incredibly difficult. But if we prioritize protein, we can eat less of the carbs, okay? So reduce portion of rice, roti, bread, and sweets. Save desserts for special occasions. Can you do that?
She can't do that.
Yeah. Just if you can, because I think that's really important. So this is so important, this next point, okay? In this Diabetes Care, which is a journal, that in 2022, it published this study, which said that in South Asians, each extra serving of white rice, a serving of white rice is this, 150 grams of cooked white rice, increase the risk of diabetes by 11%. Each extra serving of this, right? So even if we reduce a little, we are going to be able to reduce our risk of type 2 diabetes. That's massive. This isn't for every ethnic group. It's for South Asians, okay? So for us, it's really important because that's not a lot. When I first learned, I'll come back to that. I've got another thing to show.
Like curd or Greek yogurt or something.
Great.
And you need to have blocks to get
Yeah, 1 cup of Greek yogurt gives you 25 grams of protein.
1 cup.
1 cup.
That's a lot. No?
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
The cup is like a cup.
Yeah.
That's what
Yes. So
Greek yogurt, but have it two days.
yes, no, that's fine. You can add it in with other things. You can have your eggs and you can have some nuts, and you can put some fruits in there.
It's the same.
Yeah, curd comes from buffalo. Yeah.
But is it okay? No,
Yeah.
But between
It's wrong.
a lot of unlearning.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And then make smart swaps, right? Use low GI rice. Now, when I did my research, it said nadu rice. Is that something that you guys have? So that is parboiled nadu rice is a low GI rice. Flowers like kurakan, cauliflower rice. I was telling Samanthi Rodrigo that I'm going to give this talk, and I said, well, I'm not going to mention cauliflower rice. She said, what? Why not, Nelum? There's plenty of cauliflowers in Sri Lanka. Why? And so, have you ever eaten cauliflower rice?
No. I have.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen. It is something that you have to get used to.
That cause gas for some.
Yes, it can in some people.
Yeah.
Yes, but you could if you you just grate it. Yes,
Yeah.
and then you can temper it with something, and
We have
you
whole
can,
rice in Sri Lanka, which is very nice.
which is what?
Whole rice. Yeah.
All of us. Okay. Yeah. So there you go. Anything like that. And then you can mix it half and half with other rice. So if you find that you can't just have the cauliflower rice, but now. Yeah.
That's indigenous rice.
Right. Okay. Yeah, all of those are good options. Yeah.
So I buy that and I use it on something.
Right.
Because of-
The others don't. Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
likes it.
Yeah. But you can mix it half and half. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes. And then
Asking what about red rice?
what about red rice? Yes, red rice is good too. Red rice is a better option, than the white rice. So it's the polished white rice that we really need to keep away from. And then increase the non-starchy vegetables. And carawilla in particular is really good for insulin resistance, right? It's really good for managing insulin resistance.
Does the preparation better? In the way
You should fry and have assemble.
Yeah, so it depends on what you're frying with.
No, but current dinner is okay apparently fried, right?
Fried is not a problem as long as you're not using the vegetable oils. Yeah, coconut oil is great.
No, do you like the process of frying? Are you reducing its potency? Or?
I don't know. You will have to look into that. That you can do anything and
I have done a research.
yeah.
Yes, in it, like if you just boil, all your vitamins, everything goes away. But if you cook it, I did the comparison with coconut oil.
Yeah.
And then about 70% of the nutrition.
It's retained, right? Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Even seals it.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I think that thing is protected from a oil layer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
So-
you just boil.
Then it gets washed away.
Yes,
If
I mean,
people
that's
don't
right.
eat fried food, then now fried foods are better than
Yeah.
carb food. I'm like, whoa, wow, that's
So, you know,
Nutrition-wise,
yeah, that's right.
We don't eat the soup, no.
Yeah.
We throw the liquid away.
The whole thing,
Water
yeah.
away. That's not how it's supposed to be. When you
But
boil
steamed is
vegetable, you have
okay.
to keep the stock and use the stock for something else.
Yeah.
We throw the.
But I mean, how many of us eat boiled vegetables? Do we eat boiled vegetables? No. Okay. Well, you don't need to. You don't ever need to eat boiled vegetables again, right? So yeah. So is this possible? Do you think this is not hard? Is it? You could do this. If you ate more protein, could you? So this is not. We're not saying you have to give up anything. Just cut down. But please remember this: that every handful of cooked white rice that you can reduce consumption, that will reduce your risk of diabetes by 11%. That's huge. That's huge, right?
So there was one question.
Oh, yes.
Red rice one.
Yeah, red rice.
Somebody.
Yeah, I did say. So that's red rice is a better option. But again, you still need to have, it's all rice still, but it's definitely a better option. So still be aware of the fact that you can eat too much of that.
This Sweta, it's the traditional rice which has low GI.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so what about vegetable fried rice with egg cooked with coconut oil or butter? Is it good or not good? Yeah, it's great, right? As long as you're not vegetable fried rice cooked with butter or coconut oil with vegetables and eggs, right? The key thing though is that you shouldn't eat huge amounts of it because the vegetables and whatever protein you put in it builds up the bulk, and then the fat, so that's great. So yeah, so I think the key here is that we don't have to give up the flavor and the things that we love. We just need to modify what we're having. Okay. And then, truly, we are so blessed in Sri Lanka because these spices that we have, all of them contribute to managing insulin resistance. Okay. So this is, how many other countries have this multitude of these kind of spices? So these are all, so use insulin-friendly herbs and spices. So cinnamon, turmeric, pepper, fenugreek, so uluhal, curry leaves, all of these, they are great. Choose healthy fats, not vegetable oil. So in Sri Lanka, vegetable fats, this is mainly palm oil in Sri Lanka that they use. So again, palm oil is better than vegetable oil in, say, other countries because that is industrial seed oils. In Sri Lanka, that's not. Sunflower oil, canola, no. They are. Olive oil is great. The only thing, yes, not to cook on high heat. So olive oil is good on salads and things like that. But truly, cook with coconut oil, ghee, those, that's the best, and butter. Right. So vegetable oils.
Coconut oil, I will explain. It has to be like, if you all can buy virgin coconut or
that's right.
press. In
That is
Sri
the-
Lanka, we have very high level of aflatoxin.
right.
So
Okay.
because of that, if you're eating a lot of coconut oil, it's little expensive, but it's worth it.
Yes.
Virgin.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what you have to
You can't
use
tell
if you're using for fry.
Private.
Yeah.
Brands.
That's right. So if you are, yeah.
It's okay.
I don't think.
But are they all?
Oh, right. No problems.
Would have loved to
No,
say.
that's all right.
Yeah.
No problems. Okay.
I know for sure. See you.
And then avoid processed and deep fried foods. Not if you're doing this at home, then it's all the deep frying. But a lot of the time we're not doing. We get it from outside. So biscuits, buns, shorties, fried snacks. These are, because nobody's going to cook outside in all of this. They will. I don't know what will they be making it with? Vegetable oils, right? Palm oils.
Whatever that is cheap.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
They must.
Now, this is another really good tip. Cool and reheating rice or potatoes. So what happens is that the fiber, the starch is converted into, it's called a prebiotic. Okay, prebiotic is a form of a fiber, sorry. So the starch in rice, when it's cooled, is converted into a prebiotic, which is like a fiber. And then when you rewarm it, it doesn't convert back. So it's much better to cook the rice, cool it, and then reheat it. Same with potato, right? So that's a really good tip. Okay. And then also using vinegar. We don't typically use vinegar, but if you did have any type of vinegar, even the white vinegar that we have here, a tablespoon diluted in water around, just before or after food, that reduces the glucose spike and the insulin excursion. So that's another one. So if you can, so any vinegar. So any vinegar, when you have it just before a carb meal, it reduces the glucose rise and the insulin rise as well by about 30%. So anybody who has type 2 diabetes or fatty liver or anything like that, I would suggest having 10 mils of any vinegar diluted in water twice a day.
Water?
Any water, it doesn't matter, just however you want to drink it. Yeah, that's a really good one. Such an easy thing to do. Yeah. Before, after, just around the meal. Yeah. And then cooking more.
Before, while eating.
Around the meal time. You don't need to have it while eating. So if you know you're going to go out, or if that's what I do, if I know I'm going to go out and have a Sri Lankan meal, I will have that. Yeah. So somebody asked me. You asked a question, anybody? No. Okay. So those two. So cooling the rice and reheating it is really good, and then adding vinegar to it. Not adding vinegar to the rice, but having some vinegar before you eat is a really good way of. Yeah, you can. So you can. Now, what they say for any meats, that the best way to cook meat is to slow cook it. And if we're doing any frying, that to put some vinegar into it, because not all our meats are slow cooked, right? But if you put some vinegar into it, that helps as well. That reduces that toxicity. Vinegar is great. So the Japanese have a lot of vinegar with it. So that's why you have to take it with water. Don't just take it, because otherwise that can damage the enamel in the teeth and things like that. But otherwise, it's great. Vinegar has been shown to be very good. So have you had a problem with vinegar?
Yeah, I think so, that because
It can sometimes cause a little bit of heartburn, indigestion. Yeah. But if you have it with water, it's usually, yeah.
So, Nelum, the thing is not to have the rice in the warmer continuously, right?
Yeah, exactly. Cook it and cool it, and then rewarm it. So then the fiber doesn't convert back to the starch. Yeah.
Even
Nelum, bread is, my aunt says that she's putting bread into the fridge and then using
Yeah, any- yes.
She said it's good.
Yes, any starch, any starch. Yeah, yeah. So then the other thing, this is what really got me. So you know how I said that anything above 1 teaspoon of sugar or glucose is toxic in the blood? Well, this amount of white rice is the equivalent of 10 teaspoons of sugar. How many of us, I mean, maybe now we do, but I never used to just eat that.
Yeah.
Like, who eats this? Right? 3 to 4 times that was what I was eating. So can you see where the problem comes from? So 10 teaspoons of sugar, that's a lot. That's white rice. And so for purposes of this conversation, you might say, oh, well, I eat brown rice, red rice, all of that, which is better. But brown rice, for instance, has 8.5 teaspoons. So it's not that much better. Okay. So from now, this is not necessarily, this is just, so what the recommendations is, not necessarily in Sri Lanka, but this is kind of worldwide, is for people with metabolic diseases, so all those things that we talked about, is really to have this low carb or ketogenic. Now, ketogenic is very low carb. I'm not suggesting that to any of you because it is incredibly hard for any South Asian to maintain a keto diet, but low carb. And the recommendation is really the base has to be the protein. Okay, protein, dairy, milk, and then have some carbs in the way of vegetables and some of the grains, but to keep those grains at a lower level. And then have, so this, and then starchy vegetables, even starchy vegetables. So things like pumpkin, one other.
Beetroot, carrots.
No, beetroot, carrot is fine. Beetroot, they're not. So they're not considered. Yes, but not. I think things like potatoes, one other. Pumpkin, what do we have in the mornings? I think but they are whole foods. They're better than eating some of the processed stuff. So yeah, all right. So any more questions about food? Are you quite happy with that side of things? Yeah, sure.
What is the role of the carbohydrate in what side? What is the role?
Because remember, we said right at the beginning, carbohydrate is what sends the insulin skyrocketing. So that is why we're trying to reduce the carbs.
What is the positive side of it?
Oh, yeah. Well, interestingly, Shweta, if you look at the macronutrients, carbohydrates are the only macronutrients that are what we call non-essential, because all carbohydrates are broken down into glucose, and our human body can make all the glucose that we need. We don't actually need to get it from the outside. And when we were studying, we were taught that the brain needs a certain amount of glucose. Yeah. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. The brain doesn't have to have glucose to function all the time. It can use fats as well, break down products of fats, but it kind of works half and half with glucose and with fats. But basically, interestingly, carbs are not essential. When we say essential in nutrition, that means that we don't make it ourselves, that we need to get it from the outside. So, Shweta, your question is that really we don't need to have our carbs from the outside, but in our tradition, we cannot let go of carbs. I think it is incredibly hard for a Sri Lankan person to not have carbs.
So it's not to do with digesting the fat.
No, there is no requirement. Yes, there is no requirement. Digesting the fat happens with the bile. And that's another, we really need the bile. Yeah, yeah. And
The what?
bile. And so what's another thing that's happened is that because most of us for so many years have been low fat, bile is produced by the liver and concentrated in the gallbladder. And we use bile, it's like soap that breaks down dirt. So the bile breaks down the fat. Okay, but when it's sitting so what's happened is because we've been low fat and we've not eaten fat for such a long time, we've not used the bile, and that's solidified, and that's what becomes gallstones. So most of us have gallstones, and then we have gallbladders removed because we've not used the bile. Yes. So that's another. So it's a lot of relearning. Yeah. So, right. Yeah. Sugar is completely different from carbs. When we're talking about carbs, mostly what I want you to take is that sugar is a man-made synthetic product. We need to really stop that.
Not sugar, I mean, sugar in the level.
Yes, it is low. It is bad too for that, because we need 5 grams of glucose always in our blood for the brain and not brain necessarily, but there are certain cells so few cells, like certain red blood cells, that only use glucose, but the body can usually produce that. But yeah, we don't want to. So the body usually keeps it. Unless, like Gayatri I feel that Gayatri, you probably have what we call, it's gone out of my head, rebound hypoglycemia, where you probably do produce high amounts of insulin, which then kind of really cause a drop, possibly. Yeah. No, that's right. You said, we'll check your group. Yes. Yeah, it's not. Yeah. Where is it coming from? Yes.
But it's like
it is similar to that.
And it happens. My doctor can't
Figure it out.
I pain sometimes
Yes.
twice a day. But I don't have it twice a day. Like
now, yeah, because you're eating.
In the morning, I don't have it in the evening.
Right.
I don't have it in the morning, I may have it. And also sometimes at that point, I don't get satiated by eating anything else, even if I eat protein.
Right, okay.
Starch.
Right. Yeah.
I know it's bad.
Yes.
How am I?
So maybe have then whole food starches, so that you've got the fiber and the fat and the protein that comes with it, rather than white rice or bread or something like that.
Anyway, I don't eat white rice.
Yeah. Good. Okay. You're a mystery, Gayatri. Right. So the other, yes, anybody, yes, did you have a question? Yes.
High cholesterol, so you say fat food. All the cholesterol food.
So that's a whole big topic. And this is a question that comes every single time. So I have created a course on cholesterol if anybody is interested, because there's so much to say about that. But that now we know that it's not fat or high cholesterol foods doesn't increase cholesterol. There's a huge amount to say about that. But fat doesn't increase cholesterol. Yes. Yes, that is you. I'm so glad. I thought I had this on here. Yes. So certain fruits are very high in sugar. Yes. Mango, banana, papaya, pineapple. So the lower sugar fruits are things like avocado, the star fruits.
Yeah.
Guava, pear, Eva, yes. So it's not that you can't have it, but you can't have it every single day. And yeah. And you know how, I don't know, when I was young, I used to make fruit salad for my This is when I was here in Sri Lanka, and put all those fruits in there, then put a whole, and that's how we used to have it. So it's just trying to kind of get our head around that maybe that's not the best. Yeah, because your blood sugar spikes. Yeah, it's really, yes. Yes. Even in the morning, it's dessert, isn't it? That's like you're having a dessert in the morning.
Breakfast mango for breakfast is, I suppose, with sugar, right?
Yeah. So have a small amount or have it with, right. So when I have now mango season in Australia, so we have mangoes, Sajid and I, we will have it with cream. So cream is another thing that we're all terrified of.
Yeah.
But high, that's great because it's fat. It's basically fat. So if you have your fruit with cream, I don't know whether you can have, I don't know. I never ate cream here when I was a young girl, but I don't know, is it available here? You have
Probably
cream
something.
or with curd. Great way of having it. So then you dilute, so then that sugar hit is kind of a little bit offset with the fat. Yeah. Okay. So let's get moving. So then mind your timing. This is really more. Yes.
After your days to eat this rice.
Yes.
And stay.
Yeah. By increasing your protein and having more of the veg. So, we're so blessed in Sri Lanka because there's such a variety of food that we eat, good quality food, all the vegetables that we have. So could you have more protein, more of the vegetables, and a small amount of rice? Yeah, so it's not, you don't need to give up anything apart from the sugary bits. You just need to change the proportions. So it's something that you've just got to do slowly. You can't, it's hard to do, but just once you start doing that, you'll see the benefits. And not just weight loss, but what you lose is the fat here. This is what goes. It's this middle. Yeah. Okay, let's get on to timing. So eat earlier dinners. This is very, very hard, isn't it? Eat 3 hours before bedtime is the recommendation. It is so hard. And then rest the pancreas. Why is that? Because we have an issue with insulin, how we produce insulin, how much insulin. So if we let the pancreas rest, then we have more insulin capacity. And what do I mean by that? Time-restricted eating, right? So basically, if you do eat within an 8-hour window, so that you eat from, like, let's say you delay breakfast to brunch, so you eat a little bit later, and then you have a maximum of 3 meals a day within that 8 hours. And so you have something like, if you have brunch at, this might not be necessarily practical for everybody, and you've got to choose what's right for you. But if you say have, instead of having, what time is breakfast? What time is your breakfast usually? 8. So if you have, so either you can start at 8 and then finish eating 8 hours later, which is by 4, which is quite difficult. Or could you push out your breakfast to slowly to 10 if you have the opportunity to do that with work and things like that, and then have your last meal at 6. Not all the time, but maybe on the days that
Just 3 meals a day.
you don't have to have all 3 meals, but the maximum of 3 meals. Because what happens is, if you are prioritizing protein, you find that it's really hard to have 3 meals a day. What ends up happening is that you have 2 meals. You might have a brunch and an early dinner. So on the days that you're home, your work week, where you're not going out, because it's the going out that disrupts that. If you're at home, you can do that. So if you can do this 3 or 4 times a week, that's great. You're resting your pancreas. You're giving it an opportunity, so how many of you do this? How many of you do time restricted? It's really, so you can't do it slowly. there's no, so I would go, if you're having breakfast at 9, maybe could you delay it to 10, 8, could you delay it to 9? Then could you delay it to, so, and when I'm talking about breakfast, anything with milk, so if you're having tea or coffee with milk, obviously if there's sugar, you have broken your fast, right? So you can have white, you can have black tea or coffee, which doesn't break the fast with no sugar. So the best type of tea, I would say, are a herbal tea. Maybe, now in a hotel that we're staying in, we've got cinnamon tea, ginger tea, lemon tea. They're great. So you can have those without the need for sugar and milk, and that will extend your fast. So it'll still keep you full a little bit until you get to your breakfast. And you really need to try and have at least 12 hours where you're not eating from breakfast till dinner. It's really important for the body.
Skipping breakfast, okay? There's this intermittent fasting, so it's following.
Yeah.
So is it okay? Or?
It is, because breakfast, this breakfast is the most important meal of the day, is how we learn. We learn that.
Yeah.
Do you know who coined that? Kellogg's. Kellogg's, who are selling cereal. So of course, for them, it is the most important meal for the day, not for us. Yeah. Actually, the best way to eat, yes, the best way to eat is to actually have your breakfast and have dinner early. And to have your last meal at about 4 is the best way to eat. But I think you've got to wait up. For me, that's really difficult. Just because, if you have a family and you're eating your,
Exactly.
yeah. So this is the thing. So I do the other way only because it's easier for me to skip breakfast and then eat together, as a family rather than. Yeah, exactly. So it's whatever works for you. But I think if you can introduce that, eating so fasting for 16 hours, and actually men can do this really well. Men do really well with fasting. So, and then eating within an 8-hour window if that's, that's a really, what do you think? Do you think that's feasible? Do you think that's something that you could do, that you could consider? No, you have lunch. So you can have your 3 meals within that 8 hours. So what you're doing is you can still have all of that, but you're giving your pancreas, the body a rest for 16 hours without eating, because usually we're eating all the time. We're eating all the time, right? And most of us, particularly Sri Lankans, and we eat quite late at night and then we eat early in the morning. So there's no rest at all for the pancreas.
Question. If I can eat more than 3,
Yes.
manage the 8 hours, that be okay?
No. Because the problem is that every time you eat, you're getting a spike of insulin. And it's the insulin that drives all of this. So that's why we say maximum of 3 meals a day.
No, snacks like, wow.
So so if you're having a snack, have it with the meal, like a dessert, rather than having it. So because every time you eat, so if you're having a sweet or something like that, have it with the meal. Like you have the meal and then have your whatever, even your tea and coffee. Yeah. So don't have it multiple times, because every time, unless it's a black tea or coffee, you're going to get an insulin spike. Every time you get an insulin.
But even if you don't have sugar.
No sugar, just,
No sugar.
yeah.
It's okay. No
But
spike.
well, I mean, that also depends on how you metabolize coffee. Most people, if we say it, really to try and avoid coffee after 2, because then you're up at night.
Yes.
You said.
No,
Yeah.
I get it.
Out at 3 o'clock. Yeah.
It's not like I can't fall asleep.
Yeah.
But
It just depends.
3 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
I don't do so.
Yeah, reduce the coffee, particularly because that also is a stimulant. So so just.
The question.
Oh yes, what's that?
You are having fruit, isn't it better to have it before a big meal rather than after?
It doesn't matter. It really depends on what you're eating it with. It doesn't, so as long as it's part of the meal, as long as there's protein, fiber, and fat in there, it will help to offset that rise in glucose. Yeah. All right. So that's, and then finally, we are coming to build muscle. So now you should know by now why it's so important for us to build muscle, because muscle is where that is our metabolic, it is such an important, it's like our metabolic armor, right? The more muscle we have, the more capacity we have to store glucose, and for functionality, so for maintaining strength, structure, and function. It's the organ of longevity. I'll show you that. And so it's really, and it increases our survivability with age. Very, very important. Okay. So, and this, yeah, by the time we are 80, we would have lost 50 to 60% of our muscle mass from that we had when we were 20. And, you know, us Sri Lankans, particularly us girls, didn't have much muscle when we were 20, right? So what do we have by the time we're 80, right? So it's really interesting. So I want to show you this, right? So next one is, this is a study of old Asians in the Thai populations. Like there's nothing really in the South Asians that I could find, but it's very similar to what we go through. But sarcopenia is age-related muscle loss. Okay, it happens to most of us. And so if you think of maybe your mums, your aunts, your grandparents, you know, how they shrink, they become really little, you know, as they get older. They're very thin, right? So that's sarcopenia, and they become really weak and frail. Okay. So what this shows is the dark blue is people who have sarcopenia, and these are for every different weight category. So underweight, normal weight, overweight, obesity. Okay. And this axis is mortality, the rate of death. Okay. So this is people who have sarcopenia, and these are people who have normal muscle mass. So for every weight category, people with sarcopenia have a higher rate of death than people who have normal muscle mass. Okay. So this is really important. Now, what I wanted to say was, I'll just tell you a story that so I share these stories about my parents, and my mom cringes. Anyway, a few years ago, I took my parents to India, and we went on a pilgrimage, right? And we were in the Taj Mahal. We started there, and then we went on our pilgrimage. So we went to the Taj Mahal. We, you know, looked at all of this, and then Ammi said she wanted to go to the toilet. So we went to the toilet and didn't really think too much about, they were squat toilets. So, you know, the two of us went, and I was washing my hand, and then suddenly she screamed, "Nelum, Nelum." I rushed in. Luckily, couldn't lock the door, so I managed to go in. And she's sitting there, and this toilet with nothing to hold on to, where she can't stand up. She's like literally falling into the toilet, right? Because she can't hold her weight up. And so then I had to put my hands under. She's a little bit taller than me because I'm so short. Anyway, I had to put my arms under her armpits and kind of really, I mean, took every ounce of energy, but lift her up, right? Now, the thing is that my mom, she was 76 at the time. She had exercised for 25 years, right? But what did she do? She walked, she did aerobic activity. She never did any muscle building. So this is so important. The right type of exercise is important. Okay. Now at 80, nearly 82, she is doing her strength training because she realizes that that is so important for her functionality. Because if I wasn't there, what would have happened to her? You know, so it is so important. So this is... We will go to that later. So what kind of movement do we need to be doing? We need to build muscle, okay? South Asians have lower muscle mass. That leads to all the things that I talked about. So we must do strength training, resistance training, okay? And we have to eat protein. It is so important. Just 15 minutes twice a week is all we need to do. And that makes a difference. So some form of, how many of you have like go to the gym or do anything like that? Do you? Yeah, great. Okay, good. You don't have to go to a gym. You can do so many now, particularly after COVID. If you go online, and I looked, there are so many programs for Sri Lankan men, women here online as well. So there's so many. You can do this stuff at home, but it is really important to do that, okay? And simple examples like squats, lunges, wall sits, push-ups, planks, resistant bands, there's so many ways that you can do this, but 15 minutes twice a week, that's all you need to do, and to gradually push up, okay? And then high intensity training, because what we need to do, what happens is that a lot of our glucose is stored in muscle. But women, when we're exercising, we don't tend to utilize that glucose. Typically, women use glucose to in the food that we eat, and then the fats. That's how we feel. That's just the way we feel. So we need to be able to get to that. The glycogen is how we store glucose in muscle. We need to get to that glycogen, okay? And the only way we can get to that is by doing high intensity training, because then the muscles need to use immediately acting fuel in the muscle itself. So this is why high intensity training is so important. Again, it doesn't have to be long periods. You just need to do like what I do. It's called SIT. So there's so many ways that you can do it, but this is a really easy one. So it's called SIT, which is sprint interval training. Doesn't mean you have to sprint. You just need to do this so this is basically, this is what I do, okay? Just to give you an example. If I'm on the treadmill, I'm just walking, incline of 4, speed of 5. That's just a very easy. And then for 30 seconds, you push up to the highest speed that you can for 30 seconds, and then you pull back again for about 2 minutes. So you do 4 cycles of that. And what that does is it really pushes the heart just for very short periods, not long enough to spike a cortisol response. We don't want to spike cortisol because we're already high. We have a lot of stress in our bodies by this age. We just want that intensity to really improve our cardiovascular health, and without spiking that cortisol. So that's just 30 seconds. So if you're walking, then so if you've got, I don't know, where do you walk? Do you walk? Okay, right. Yeah. So are there like lampposts or trees or something like, so then between a certain number of trees, you just have to run, sprint, or walk. If you're not ready to sprint, walk really fast where you're really kind of out of breath, and then you slow down and so that's how you do it. So just 4 cycles. It's not difficult, but it's really important. Okay. And then so those examples: hill sprints, skipping, fast cycling, burpees, dancing, anything. You don't have to, this doesn't have to be an organized exercise. You can put music on and dance or whatever. And daily movement, every bit counts, because what do? We mostly sit, right? We sit. That's what we do. And that's sitting is the next smoking, they say. It's as bad, right? So we need to move. And it could be walking, gardening. So walking is not considered exercise. It's considered movement, because that's just generally what we should be doing, okay? And get sunlight. We have to get sunlight, okay? It's so important for that vitamin D. So we've got to, how many of you have tested your vitamin D levels? Yeah, you have to get it checked. So important. Yeah, It would be, but first because we are the color we are, because we have, so the reason why we are brown is because we live in a tropical country where the sun is very strong. So we evolved to have some protection. So our brown skin, natural sunscreen, okay? And so the idea is that because we should be out and about, then even if we have a brown skin that doesn't absorb as much of the sunlight, we should still be able to absorb enough to make vitamin D. But if we don't spend any time outside, then that's a problem. So really important, okay? So I just want to finish off with this. So this is a campaign that I ran last year when I went away to Italy. And this was called 10 squats anywhere, anytime. So I just want So basically, the idea is, so anybody whoever was with me had to do the squats, and we got any. So just squatting is such an easy thing to do. I have a patient who said that whenever she goes to the toilet, she does 10 squats. And being women, we go to the toilet a lot. So if you just remember to do those 10 squats, because it's the big muscles that we need to build. We need to build up big muscles. Okay. So finally, what I want to say is for South Asians, it's all about balance. It's not eliminating, okay? So it's not about eliminating anything. It's by combining the fasting and strength training, we can still enjoy. It gives us room to enjoy the foods that we love, you know, and the particularly with the people that we love as well. So basically, this is what I want to end this by saying, this is my message to you, is that you don't have to give up everything you love to be healthy. Lasting wellness is about priorities, balance, and compromise. It's not sacrifice. With the right choices, you can honor your culture and protect your health. So okay. Now, that was a long talk. My contact details, if you want to, I'll send you all of this on my email. Now, for anybody who wants to do a deep dive, what I have created this early this year, this South Asian solution. So basically, this lecture, but in a much more, with a lot more detail. It's a self-guided online course. And I've given a 50% discount because, you know, that, well, and then the code is SL25, and that is valid until 31st of December. If anybody, I can send the details through to you. And for anybody who wants to know about cholesterol, because that's the next big one, I have done a comprehensive online course called The Truth About Cholesterol. But I'll send you all of that as well. So finally, I mean, we probably don't have any more questions, but do you have anything else, any comments,